Hi there, my name is Casey Keir, and
I'm Eric here.
And this is The Gathering Reviews. We will be doing an overview of the two new mechanics being introduced in Born of the Gods in the Theros block, Tribute and Inspired.
Now these are being introduced on top of the existing mechanics, so we won't see Monstrous, but we will see Bestow and obviously Heroic. Those are the two abilities that are coming back.
And also Devotion is back to play as well.
Obviously, the whole block, I feel, is really about devotion to a color. You're devoting yourself to a god in use of those colors.
Yeah. Well, now it's just more or less just devotion to the color itself more than the gods.
Well, we got the first ability, which is Tribute.
Now, I like Tribute a lot for as a limited play style, just because like I like the Pain and Profit, or you're giving your opponent a choice.
Yeah.
Of what you're going to do when this card hits the field.
But here's the thing I don't like, and let's go over the ability real quick so everyone knows exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So for instance, let's take the big one for me, the Thunder Brute. It's a 4 red for a 5/5 Tribute 3. Now, after the spell resolves, before it actually makes it all the way to the battlefield, your opponent must make a decision. He has Tribute 3. That means either your opponent will give him 3/1/1 counters, or something else is going to happen. And that other ability only triggers if Tribute wasn't paid. For instance, with Thunder Brute, when Thunder Brute comes into play, if Thunder Brute's Tribute wasn't paid, then he gets Haste. Which doesn't sound like much, but when you consider it's a 5/5 with Trample already, the other 3/3 would make it an 8/8 for 6. So I've paid 5/5. I've paid 6 mana for 5/5 red Trample. I think that's an awesome cost. But the other way around is I could get an 8/8 with Trample. I kind of like that too. But the thing is, this is the important part. It depends on what your opponent picks. Now, giving that kind of power to your opponent isn't just kind of a way of seeing where your opponent lies on it, but you got to think of it this way. You're always going to get the worst end of this card. For instance, do you have any particular Tribute cards you like?
I honestly, my favorite has to be the Nissian Wilds Ravager, which is the Destiny Pack promo for green in this set. And that's just because it seems to me like the biggest payoff. It's either going to gobble a creature, because it is the largest for that mana cost, the 6/6 for 4 and double green, or it becomes a 12/12, which in this set is the highest we've seen for power and toughness.
Exactly. You know, the options really come down to simply one of two things. Either you're going to get a 12/12 for 6, and that's pretty good. You can't argue with that. Or you're going to end up getting a 6/6 for 6 that when it hits the battlefield, it fights with another creature. Obviously, you don't want to fight something with Death Touch. But at the same time, you definitely want to pick something that is going to be a prominent opponent for this creature.
Yeah.
Maybe something a 5/5 or maybe even another 6/6 if you can give them indestructible.
What I like about Tribute is not just you don't just getting the effects of the card as you see it on the card, like through its text. You also get insight into your opponent as where he stands, in the game at that point. Like you see Nissian hit the field, and he's gonna let you get the 12. Okay, get the 12/12. You gotta have a mindset now that okay, why is he giving me the 12? Does he have an answer for this?
Or maybe he's just really not willing to give up something, and he thinks he can chump block it for a while.
True. Maybe you play it when he has high-profile creatures on the field, and he knows what you're gonna pick.
Or like I said, he just knows that he can chump block this thing, and it's not going to be a big problem for him.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have trample automatically, but it's not to say that you can't give it trample.
Yeah.
There are a couple of spells and abilities out there.
I think that's the reason you like the Thunder Brute so much. It's because it's got that.
It's got an answer for pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
If you don't want to give him haste, that's fine. He'll eat your creatures later on.
One thing we gotta tack on real quick though is because wording is a big deal when talking about mechanics for any set really.
Yeah.
The actual wording for the card for Tribute is so it'll be Tribute and a number. And then in parentheses, it'll say, as this creature enters the battlefield, your opponent may pay tribute to it. If the tribute is paid, put such and such counters on it. If it wasn't paid, then the rest of the text is at the bottom.
Now, the interesting thing is about this, there are actually some cards that have targets with their tribute-related abilities.
Such as Wild Ravager.
For instance, yes, exactly. You wouldn't want to go and play Wild's Ravager and say, oh, are you going to give him 12/12, or he's going to eat your creature over there? That's not a good idea. You're going to give your targets up. But here's the more important thing. There is actually one of the tributes, not tributes, I'm sorry, one of the tributes where it really does matter about your targeting, and that actually has a lot more to do with spellcasts and stuff like that. It's the Oracle of Bones.
Oracle of Bones, yeah.
Oracle of Bones is really interesting because you can either get a 3/1 for 4 with haste, automatically has haste, or if you don't pay the tribute, your opponent gets to cast a spell from their hand for free. It's an instant or sorcery, basically. Mm-hmm. Now, the interesting thing about this mechanic is, if the tribute was paid, the second ability never even triggers. So it's not like, oh, do you have a spell in your hand? The other thing is that they don't pay the tribute. Yeah, you get a 3/1 with haste, and that doesn't sound fantastic for 4, but you could play out some pretty awesome spells. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we don't have any overload or anything like that, but if you have any alternative costs that go along with the card, for instance, with overload, if we were playing in a constructed environment, you could use the overload because it is a replacement cost. Obviously, that's more constructed, but
that's less about limited.
Now, Inspired, that one is really interesting.
You seem to know more about this than
I love this ability because it can happen so many times in a single match. Now, Inspired basically reads, when this creature becomes untapped, do this. For instance, my favorite one actually is Fellhide
Spiritbinder.
Fellhide Spiritbinder. Thank you very much. The way this works is it's a 3/4 for 1 red, 3 other, already a solid creature. It's a Minotaur Shaman. When it becomes untapped, you may pay 1 and a red, and if you do, make a copy of target creature, put a token onto the battlefield that is a copy of target creature. It gains haste, and at the end of turn, exile it. Now, what's really interesting about this is for instance, when the trigger goes on the stack, you don't pay for the cost. What happens is, you choose your target, you give your opponent an opportunity to respond. If there is no response, that is when you pay the activation costs. Or not activation costs, I'll take that back. Because it's not actually an activation cost.
Because it's a triggered ability.
It's a trigger cost. In the sense that when the ability goes to resolve, that is when the ability's cost is paid. If there was a sacrificing or something like that involved. And triggers are different in that way than activated abilities, because activated abilities have this cost relation with them. And with trigger, the cost isn't really there. It's actually just based on an event in the game. Because with activation
abilities, you must pay the mana to put the ability on the stack.
Exactly.
So this one is
already on the stack.
And it's already on the stack.
So,
and then...
So, for instance, actually, and this is a very interesting thing with Tribute and this particular card, is, for instance, if I was playing red-green and I had a Nessian Wild's Ravager out, and I really wanted to put my opponent on the spot, I could make a copy of it. Now, here's the thing. It has haste, because it is a copy thanks to Fellhide. Now, your opponent does have to go through the cost of paying Tribute, or is it going to let it eat something? Now, that's really interesting, because if you do this, and your opponent goes, okay, you're targeting your Nessian Wild's Ravager, okay, I'll let that go through. Alright, I'll pay the 1 red and 1 other. Okay, in response to that, I'm going to kill him. You can't. It's already gone through the resolution steps. Now, once you go to the part where there's a tribute, you either pay the tribute or you don't. Okay, was the tribute paid? Let's say they don't want to pay the tribute. Alright, so now the Nessian's Wild's Ravager goes onto the battlefield. Now the tribute wasn't paid, so he gets to fight a creature. So the ability for fighting goes onto the stack. At that point, if they wanted to kill that token, they could, and then the fight ability would do nothing. But you also then have to worry about other things as well. I mean, if they had something to answer with it, they probably would have done it as soon as you went to attack with the 12/12.
If they can't kill that original Nessian Wild Ravager, they're just going to see the same situation
again and again and again.
Now, one of the things you spoke of earlier was the way Inspired works during the untap step.
Okay.
This is something that's confused me actually before, but
this is really interesting because you can't actually do anything during the untap step. The untap step is the only step in the game where no player may take any action and no card can take any action. This is a part of the game where nothing can actually be done.
So when does the ability hit the stack?
Actually goes onto the stack as soon as your upkeep opens up, which means if you have other abilities that care about the upkeep, you can stack them together. So for instance, let's say you have an inspired creature that produces tokens. And let's say you also have the Fellhide Spirit Binder, and you want a bunch of those tokens on top of that one you already have. So, for instance, then goodness gracious, I'm forgetting it now. It's the inspired creature for red that produces 3/1 tokens. I can't remember his name right now.
Well, you know what, then let's go with the Crone General, the white one.
Okay, the Crone General.
So
you're running red-white. At the beginning of your upkeep, you get to untap, or you get the untap effect from Inspired. The ability goes on the stack. You have a bunch of mana available. It's really late in the game, so you pay the 3 to make 2/1 tokens because you're going to put your Fellhide on the first, and then after that you're going to put your General. So your General resolves, you pay the cost. By the way, you don't pay the cost until it resolves. So if they go to kill the General, you don't have to pay the cost, because obviously he's not there anymore. Actually, I think you can still get the tokens. I'm not 100% sure on that. So anyway, you pay the cost, you put the tokens out there. The Fellhide Spirit Binder goes off, and you go, you know what, I really need another one of those little tokens because I'm going to do stuff with that. So you go ahead and pay 2 mana, and you make a copy of that token. The difference is between those tokens and the tokens the General produced, the token obviously goes away at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
and also
you can actually do that.
If you were tapping it with anything.
Yeah, if you have some kind of ability, or you're just attacking with it.
Yeah, which is the more common way to use them.
So that's how Inspired works. But you can get it to trigger with other effects. For instance, let's just look at Trident Tactics. That one will untap your Inspired creatures and cause them to trigger, on top of giving them all this other cool stuff.
Yeah.
So this is something to look for, because you are getting some Theros, and you are getting some Born of the Gods. For the pre-release, or even just drafts.
Yeah.
So this is something to look at. Obviously, you're not going to want to build around Inspired if you're drafting. On the other hand, with Spoiler, or with
Tribute.
No, I'm sorry. The other play type. The one we're going to.
That's the proof.
For the sealed, there it is.
Sorry.
For the sealed, you get more boosters of Born of the Gods, so you can do a little bit more with Inspired. With drafting, you only get the 1 booster, so it's a little bit more.
So that means you want to pick. You need to be more picky with the Inspired cards.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to want to use them for whatever reason.
But so we were talking about them being activated more every turn. A good card for that we've been looking at was Kira's Follower, which is a highlighted card for that type of type of ability.
Really,
being able to tap it itself just to untap any other permanent of your choice.
So on top of, obviously, everyone thinks,
gives you more control.
I can untap a land now,
over that.
Or I can untap a blocker. This could be used to untap your Inspired creatures. For instance, if you have an Inspired creature that may be attacked, or maybe you tapped it with some other enchantment or other activated ability of some sort, you could untap it and immediately get the effect of Inspired. And that's important because, let's say, for instance, you want a token from your General, or you want to maybe draw a card from your Sphinx Disciple. So you could really take advantage of this in multiple formats. But I think, to be honest with you, Inspired is going to be more of a constructed type, and of course, Tribute is going to be a lot more about seeing what your opponent's doing in the event, whether it be drafting or sealed deck.
I definitely like Tribute more than Inspired in the limited format, just because, like you said, it's not just putting your opponent on the spot, making them pay for you getting a certain creature, depending on what creature you're playing for the Tribute. It just depends on what cards you like for the Tribute, really.
It is always, like you said, noticeable to note that when your opponent gives you the counters, chances are they want to give you those counters so that the creature can't do anything right away, and then they can kill it next turn or even at the end of that turn.
Because we're seeing a lot of the tribute abilities that if they don't pay the tribute, the creature gains haste or something that allows it to.
Or the giant deals 5 damage to each opponent.
Some effect that happens right when it hits the field. And like I said, it kind of gives you an insight on where your opponent's sitting.
Well, that makes it up for those 2 abilities and for our coverage on them. We're also doing a spoiler of all of the colors, including multicolor and artifact. So check them out.
All right.
No.